By all accounts, there were two big matches on this weekend. The first one was the Springboks against Samoa, and then, of course, there was England against Wales, which apparently the entire Northern Hemisphere had been waiting for to see what's going to happen. Let's start with the Springbok match. What did you make of the performance by the Boks in their second match at the Rugby World Cup?
Well, first of all, I think it was a much better performance than last week against Japan. I think the bonus point was crucial for us, Kendall. Still a lot of question marks. I don't think it was the best performance by a Springbok team by a long shot, but a big step up from last week, and hopefully we can pull it off against Scotland, who are probably the informed team in Group B at the moment. So I think, you know, we did a good job, but the handling errors, we conceded 15 penalties. We can't do that against a team like England, Australia, or any of the bigger teams. So a few aspects that we still need to work on, but a good performance by the team.
Well, you mentioned a few aspects that we need to work on. Going into the match, there was a lot of doubt as to how the Springboks were going to redeem themselves and give answers to all their critics. One of the things that a lot of people were saying was that it's going to be a very tight match. We're looking at something like a 28-17 match, that kind of thing, with the Springboks winning. Did you see it like that?
No, I think if we had some of the players we had against Japan, we probably could have looked at a score like that. But yeah, it just shows having the value of an experienced guy, a guy that can take control of a game. For Rido Prio, who for me was probably the man of the match. Andre Pollard, who had a number 10 that took control of the game, unlike Pat Lambie did last week. And also Dwayne Vermeulen, although he had a few quiet game carrying the ball, you know, at the breakdown, he was phenomenal. And I think if these players, you know, get into ruck as the tournament progresses, I think the Springboks will only do better and better, but you know, not clinical at all, like I said.
Oh, you forget maybe Damien Diayende, who did extremely well with his stepping, running into space, offloading in the tackle.
For sure, and I thought he was very unlucky not to play against Japan. I think him and Jean de Villiers I would have started him as the centre combination against Japan last week. Also a phenomenal game. I was a bit surprised that they took him off so early, though. I would have thought they would have given him more game time to break the Samoans' defence.
Would you have any word on his injury before we go into Jean de Villiers, on whether, because he came off limping in that particular match, you know what's happened with him since?
No, I don't know.
All right, one would hope that he's actually able to start and play in the next big match that we've got on the weekend. Let's go to Jean de Villiers, the captain, who's now retired from international rugby, and his retirement comes at an inopportune time.
It comes just a few days after Coach Heineke May told not only South Africa but the whole rugby world that he's sticking to his captain. He's got faith in his captain. This is the guy that he wants to lead the team. And now it's all over. Jean de Villiers in itself, he played more than 100 games for South Africa, a phenomenal leader. One of the few Springbok captains of the last decade or last 2 decades, I think, since 1995, that, you know, was embraced by the South Africa's rugby-loving public. Of course, we had question marks about his form last week against Japan. He, by all, admitted himself that he didn't have the best game. But unfortunately, against Samoa, I thought he had a few good runs, but it all came to an end.
With that said, I mean, he went into this particular World Cup with just having recovered from a broken jaw. And surely he came in a little too soon, because the shoulder bump that he got on his face was not enough to break a jaw. And his jaw must have been weakened by his previous injuries.
He's one of a lot of players in the Springbok team. I also read this morning that Willem Alberts, if he doesn't recover in time, might miss out. But Jean de Villiers, you know, rugby is a contact sport, and if it takes a knock like that to end your career, I think his fitness should have been questioned from the beginning. And not only there's a few other players that I have my doubts about as well, Kendall.
Well, let's talk about his replacement. Jan Serfontein from the Bulls, plays for the Blue Bulls in the domestic league and the Bulls in Super Rugby. What do you make of his replacement? He hasn't quite lit up the track in his performances.
I think he had a good season in 2013, had a couple of good games last year. He's familiar with the Springbok structure, so I can understand the selection. He was unlucky to miss out with Damien Diayende and Jesse Kriel having played the way they did before. I'm quite surprised. I watched him in a couple of the Currie Cup games. He, like you said, he didn't light up. And I would have thought, yeah, somebody like Lionel Mapu would have phenomenal Super Rugby. He was also part of the Springbok training group, would have been an option for me as well.
All right. Well, once again, we're not looking to critique and criticize, but having said that, an SOS sent out, would have hoped that the replacement would be somebody that we all agree with, like Lionel Mapu, like you just said.
If I could just add to that, Kendall,
yeah.
Also please not forget that Jan Serfontein was actually in 2012 the Under-20 World Player of the Year. So he does have a good pedigree. He understands the Springbok system. He's got about 15 tests under his belt. So I think if he gives given game time, he should be a capable replacement. But like I said, Lionel Mapu would have been a better option at this stage.
Once again, I think it brings out into bear that argument between experience versus form. past results versus current track record.
If you had to go on form, Lionel Mapo definitely would have been the man.
I'm with you there. Now let's go through to the other match, the other big match of the weekend. That excellent result that Wales got against England at Twickenham in England's World Cup, as the commentator would say.
Kendall, I actually thought that Australia and England would pip this group. Wales, like we said, Lee Halfpenny, they lost a couple of key players ahead of the World Cup, and they came out all guns blazing, 2 bonus points in their first 2 games. So they're the informed team. And, you know, I think it's a lot of pressure, this result, on a team like Australia, who's won the World Cup twice before, and now for the first time in history might not even make the playoffs. And rightly so that they call it the group of death. But also the thing that made the difference in this game was the goal kicking. If you're going to make mistakes and you have a goal kicker that's going to kick the ball through the poles, you're asking for trouble.
Now, with that said, I mean, the Wales came up with the goods. They seemed to be trailing. England had the match by the scruff of the neck. They made a couple of errors, some wrong calls that we, in retrospect, think they were making towards the end. And Wales's kicker, Bigger, was phenomenal.
England, for me, dominated the first 70 minutes of the game, all facets, and Wales had to play catch-up rugby, and all of a sudden, that last 10 minutes, they got their tails up, they got a few kicks over the poles, they got a try, and all of a sudden, they took the game by 3 points. I think England were lucky to get a bonus point out of this game, though.
Yeah, now with that said, I mean, going into this particular match, I remember speaking to a few other analysts about the match, and Wales, we were not giving Wales any chance. They'd lost Lee Halfpenny. They were going into the match with a depleted backline. In fact, they had 2 scrum halves playing at the same time. One was playing wing and the other was in his right position, and they still managed to pull it off. That's real courage.
I was one of the people that said that I don't think Wales will be probably the unlucky loser in this group of death. But now they've come up, they've produced the goods, and like I said, the pressure is now on 2 former champions in this group as well, England and Australia, to hopefully, because Wales has got a couple of, besides the Australian game, they've got a few smaller teams that they're playing against, and they're probably now the favourites. So, you know, go Wales.
All right, now let's, before I let you go, quickly go through from Pool A through to Pool D. Pool A, who are the 2 teams you think are going to make it?
I think to Wales at this point, and then Australia as well.
All right, and then we look at Pool B, South Africa's pool, where we stay. Would you think South Africa is going to be one of those 2 making it through?
I think South Africa will be one of the 2. I think it's a big question, are we going to end first or second? Because Scotland at the moment, that's probably going to be our toughest game this coming week. And if we can get a bonus point victory against them and stop them from getting a bonus point.
Yes.
Because if we get a victory and with only 4 points and they get a bonus point, it will be 11 each and they'll still go top.
Whoa. And then we'd probably be second.
And then we'll
Pool
probably
C?
play Wales in the quarters. Pool C, I think, you have to go with France and Ireland probably going to be the next team.
And then Pool D?
New Zealand, Argentina. I think that's set itself.
They're sticking to the script.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, I want to thank you very much. Really enjoyed talking to you every single time. I do hope that you enjoyed the rest of the rugby. You will be commentating. That's Jody Hendricks, who gives us the best of the best from what's been happening over this last weekend in the rugby world.